International Students and Scholars. I should say good morning from Colorado State University. It might not be morning where you're at. More than likely, it's afternoon or evening. So good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're at. I noticed that we have fewer attendees today, which is okay. That's no matter to me, because what I would say is whether there's 30 people I'm presenting to or one person I'm presenting to, you all are important. And so today, really the goal is to provide you with some visa tips and really kind of give you some expectations onto how to successfully navigate the visa interview process. Now, just because you attend this doesn't necessarily going to mean that you're successful, but it is one of those things that I feel like, and we've heard from students that attending this session does kind of give you a better expectation of what to anticipate, helps you to be a little bit more calm when you actually go to get your interview. Before I start the presentation, I did want to mention if you have any questions in the question and answer box, feel free to put any questions that you do have. I may not answer them right away, but towards the end of this session, we will go through those questions and I will answer those questions. So with that, again, glad that you're here. We will get started. Again, my name is Greg Weimer and I'm the Director of International Students and Scholars on campus, and it is an honor to be able to be with you today and actually present this topic. So the first thing that I'm going to tell you to do when you start your visa, you're going to have to begin the process. So once you receive your I-20, you're going to need to pay the SEVIS fee. The SEVIS fee is actually not charged by Colorado State University, but it's charged by the US government, and it's different from your visa application fee. So your SEVIS ID is the number that's listed on your I-20, and you will use that ID number to pay the fee. So make sure that you write your name exactly as it appears on your I-20. And if the name on the I-20 or on your I-20 does not match the passport, please contact our international admissions team before paying the SEVIS fee and applying for your visa. Once you've actually paid that SEVIS I-901 fee, then you actually want to print out a receipt of that SEVIS fee receipt. Then the next process is actually the next step is to complete the DS-160 form. And the DS-160 form is the online visa application that's available on the US Embassy or the consulate's website. So you should pay the visa fee if required in advance of your visa appointment. You'll need to upload an approved photo as part of the application and then print out and keep the DS-160 confirmation page. And then finally, make your visa at the local embassy or consulate. And we're going to get probably a lot of questions. What happens if there's no appointments available? We'll talk a little bit about that. And if I don't put that question in the question answer, and I'll make sure that, excuse me, I address that. So with that, we want to let you know what to expect during the visa interviews. So first of all, the visa interviews are conducted in English, and they don't last very long. And we'll talk about how long that they last, but they're relatively quick. Digital fingerprint scans are usually taken during the visa interview process, so you can anticipate that. Excuse me. And the visa interview record is for life or until you become a US citizen. And then finally, the US consular officer makes the ultimate decision. So a lot of times what we tell you is that applicants are oftentimes very nervous about this part of the visa application process. However, if you remain calm and answer questions honestly and bring all the required documents, the process can be very straightforward. As I mentioned, the visa interviews are in English, and so do not bring another person to speak on your behalf or request the interview to be conducted in any language other than English. Now, if you are an English as a second language student coming to our PLACE program, there is going to be an anticipation that your English is going to be, skills aren't going to be as good as maybe someone who is fluent in English. And so typically the consulate officers do know the official language of your country, that kind of thing. And so don't be nervous if you are an English as a second language student. As I mentioned, the visa interview record is for life or until you become a US citizen. So if you're ever asked, Have you been denied a visa for? Have you ever been to the United States on a visitor's visa? Answer truthfully because the consulate officer already knows. And then the US consulate officer makes the ultimate decision as to whether you'll be granted a student visa, and he or she will exercise a lot of discretion in this process. I would love to tell you that this is an objective process, but it is extremely subjective based on the visa consulate officer's perspective, what they hear from you, so on and so forth. Okay. So documents to bring. You want to bring your I-20 form. Remember to sign it. So we're going to send it to you electronically. You want to print that off and you want to sign it. Bring your passport, your visa application, the DS-160 confirmation page, and fee receipt if required to pay in advance. Your Colorado State University admissions letter, TOEFL, IELTS scores, or whatever you've proven to show that you're fluent in English. Now, if English is your official language of your country, you don't have to bring a TOEFL or IELTS score. GRE if you're a graduate student, and if you've done the GRE, documents to show that you've been a great student, so transcripts, that kind of thing, financial support documents, and then other documents to show strong ties to your country, maybe documentation of property in your name or parents' information, income tax documents, that kind of thing. Now, it is okay to take these additional documents. Just know that you'll not be asked for them unless it comes up in the interview. So visa interview documents are different in each country, so from country to country. So please check with your local U.S. consular office to make sure that you have the documents that you need for the interview. This is a general list, and I think a pretty comprehensive list that we're showing you here. And while documents are important, the most important part of obtaining your visa is the interview with the visa consulate officer. So the documents can look great. However, if the visa officer has any concerns during the interview based on your verbal responses will outweigh any positives that are presented in the documents. So typically what's happening is the visa consulate officer is asking you questions. They want to get to know kind of what your intent is. And then they want to compare what you're saying with what's provided in the written documents so that to see whether there's consistency or any inconsistencies in regards to your verbal responses. So we tell students that the interview is a high stakes. And so this actual interview or your conversation with the visa consulate officer, or the the visa officer, can make or break your ability to receive a visa. So it is very important that you present yourself in a specific way. So how do you present yourself? It is crucial how you present yourself. So there's a couple of 6 key steps. One, don't memorize your answers. It's important that it doesn't seem like you have a speech that's memorized. They want to just talk with you genuinely and find out kind of what your perspective is, what your intent is, what you desire to do, so on and so forth. So do not memorize your answers. If you as the applicant are extremely nervous, it makes the visa consulate officer wonder if you're being truthful. So one thing I'm going to tell you is as you approach that embassy window or that consulate officer, take a deep breath, be calm. We tell you be respectful. So yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, depending on whether it's a male or female that's actually greeting you and actually doing your interview. And then number 4, answer truthfully. And we don't say this because we are implying that you're a dishonest individual. You're not. But as mentioned before, if you're caught in a lie, it's an immediate grounds for denial, and later attempts will be impacted negatively as well. So you just want to be as truthful and honest as you possibly can. Be confident. Not overconfident, not arrogant, but confident. You've been admitted to a solid nationally ranked university and you are qualified. And so you're coming to study. And so be confident in that fact. And then finally, be familiar with the university and Fort Collins community. So learn a little bit about CSU, read and learn about your courses and your program, know the names of a few professors. Know a little bit about Colorado and Fort Collins. What's the weather like? Where is Colorado located in the US? Have some idea of where you're going. If you're coming from a warm weather climate and they say, well, are you sure you're going to be able to handle Colorado? It's cold there during the winters. Yeah, yeah, it snows a little bit. Well, it can snow a lot, okay? But typically, the average temperature, and this is 40 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not sure exactly what that translates to Celsius, but typically it'll snow, and then like 3 days later, all of the snow will be melted. And so the snow doesn't stick around, and it is moderately cool, cold, so to speak, but it's not as cold as some places in the United States. So don't memorize your answers. Be calm, be respectful, answer truthfully, be confident, and be familiar are the things that we would suggest that you do. With I'm going to actually say one more thing, go back to this slide. So a lot of times as I engage international students, they have this wonderful smile about them and this super disposition and sweet spirit about them. That's an advantage to you, okay? I know that in some cultures, smiling can be considered that maybe you're not being truthful or whatever. In US culture, in American culture, smiling is actually a good thing, sets a person at ease. So if you have this wonderful smile, okay, as you approach them, be calm, smile, and let that be a strength for you as you are engaging the officer. It will go a long way. So, all right. So, insight from our former U.S. consular officer. I've had a chance to go to some professional conferences, and we've had like former U.S. consulate officers that have presented on what the visa interview is like. And so we've taken some of those notes and transposed those onto the next couple of slides here so that it gives you an idea of what consulate officers are thinking. Okay, so first of all, there can be cultural misunderstandings at times. Sometimes the visa officers are new in their positions and they don't always understand the culture of applying. So, for example, one of the consulate officers that we've spoken to in the past said when they first started, they were stationed in China, and Chinese couples kept bringing their grandparents to the embassy to apply for a visitor's visa at the same time when they were coming to the United States on their honeymoon. And that visa consulate officer was like, that's strange. In the US, couples would never bring their grandparents on the honeymoon. So they were denying visas left and right. Until they started talking to other visa consulate officers in the Chinese embassy, and they came to find out that in China, a lot of times grandparents actually will step in and play the roles of parents and really support them. And so, as a way of thanking their grandparents for all of the impact they've had in their lives, they want to take their grandparents on the honeymoon with them to the U.S. or wherever they're going. And so once that consulate officer realized that and had those conversations with other Chinese embassy, U.S. embassy consulate officers, they started changing their decision because they started to understand the culture a little bit better. So sometimes there's cultural misunderstandings. Sometimes there's limited language abilities of the ambassador or the consulate officer. Consular officers go through intensive language training, but that may not be enough for them to fully understand all aspects of the local language. And so just be aware that, again, you're going to be presenting yourself and speaking mostly in English, but there could be, especially for those intensive English language learners or ESL students that are coming over, they sometimes they may have to switch to the local language, okay? And then finally, consular officers are many times overworked with limited information. So as I told you before, the interviews are relatively short. Typically, they last no longer than 3 minutes. Consulate officers need to get through 20 interview applicants per hour. So they don't have a lot of time to talk with you. So they might ask some follow-up questions, but anticipate that your interview with that visa consulate officer is going to be extremely short. Okay, so something to consider. So decisions are final. So when a consulate officer makes a decision, it cannot be overturned, even by the officer's supervisor. It's known as the doctrine of consular non-reviewability. And so once they've made their decision, there's no appealing to someone above them or anything like that. They have sole discretion to approve or deny your visa. If you're denied, students can apply again. However, the chances of another denial become incrementally higher each time that you apply. And so just be aware of that. Typically, what the consulate officer wants to see if you apply again is what information do you have that's above and beyond what you presented before that can help them make a decision one way or the other or to approve your visa. So you typically need to have something new to present to a visa consulate officer. And then refusals are difficult to overcome. A fresh look is true in theory, but case notes of previous refusals typically are reviewed by the consulate officer prior to or during the interview. And consular officers can look back at the notes from previous visa appointments. And then finally, visa rejection rates are between 35 and 60% for student applicants, depending on the country. So that's pretty high. So, basically there is a chance, a chance that you could be denied for sure. There's definitely a chance that you can be approved, but it all just depends on the consulate officer. Sometimes I tell students, sometimes just the circumstances of that visa consulate officer's day is going to impact your visa interview. If I'd love to tell you that that this is a very objective process, but it's subjective. If a visa consulate officer is having a bad day, the increases of a denial are higher. Okay, or the chances of denial are higher just because they're having a bad day. If they're having a fantastic day and you catch them on a good day, it could be a higher probability of getting approved for the visa. So it just kind of ebbs and flows, determines it's based on the visa consulate officer and kind of their state of mind that day as well. Try to get a reason why you were denied in writing. They're going to hand you a basic form, and I'm going to talk about that on the next slide. But if you have the time, you can ask the visa consulate officer, hey, is there a reason why I was denied? They may say, nope, you can apply again. Here's the INA 214B form that they give you that kind of gives a basic general reason for denial. But maybe sometimes they go, well, I don't know if you have the ability, your funds, your financial documents just aren't as strong as I would like to see. Apply again and bring stronger funds back. But if they say, nope, you can apply again, don't engage the consulate officer in an argument. That'll go in the notes and it'll be difficult for you to overcome that in another interview. So just be respectful. You can ask that question why you were denied, but if they don't want to tell you, they don't really have to tell you. Okay, and so just be aware of that as well. Okay, so I mentioned INA 214B, and that covers everything. It's an extremely broad statute that a consulate officer can refuse a visa for anything. If they perceive anything to be kind of off or any of your answers to not be matching with the documents that you provided, or they just get this feel that you're not telling the truth, they can deny you for that. The U.S. consulate officers are considered human lie detectors by the State Department. They go through a lot of training on this. And so if they feel something's off, they can use 214B as a reason and not give you any other reason for the denial. This is why it's extremely important to be honest and genuine and just present yourself as who you are. As mentioned before, they have notes from previous interviews. So if anything does not match, they'll probably deny you. Okay. Now, sometimes you get through the interview process, and one of the questions we get a lot is, will I know at the end of the interview whether I've been approved or denied? And in most cases, yes. They'll say you're either denied or you've been approved a visa, and then they'll give you instructions on how you can pick up your passport with the visa stamp later. I'm going to cross my fingers and just actually anticipate that all of you are going to be accepted. That's what we truly hope is the case. But sometimes or approved, not accepted. But sometimes they actually give you a form that's 221G, and it's the term of it is administrative processing. And so this is not necessarily a denial. It just means that there's something that they need to check on, or something's not quite right with your paperwork. So it could be a number of things, including maybe they didn't need to do a background check because a flag that was raised during the interview. Maybe you're an unlucky person that has the same exact name as someone who is on the watch list. And so as a result, they have to do more information, pull you up in a system, kind of double check that you're not that individual. So that could be a reason. Maybe documentary things need to be resolved, such as maybe there's a program start date on your I-20 that is either in the past or needs to be corrected. And so or maybe there's something on the I-20 that you need to contact us, and we need to make a correction on your I-20. That's why it's extremely important to go through that I-20 line by line, make sure everything is accurate on there. If something's not accurate, like your name spelling or whatever, contact our admissions team and we'll quickly correct that and get you a new copy of the I-20. Maybe, like I said, the program start date could need review, especially for those programs that are listed on the list for national safety. And so maybe they're doing a little bit of background from there. So if you get 221G administrative processing, it doesn't mean you're denied. It just means that they need to do more research or take more time to review, or something needs to be corrected. So if you get that, usually they're leaning towards approving your visa, but they just need a little bit more information. So be aware that that could happen. Final consular officer thoughts. So if the visa application process is taking a very long time and you think you'll be late for the start of the semester, one thing that they've told us is make sure you contact our International Student Services offices as early as possible, and then we can assist you on adjusting either your program start date. Maybe you have to defer because you can't get a visa appointment, that kind of thing. Once you receive your visa and you enter the United States, don't get into trouble. Okay, it goes without saying, but students get into trouble in some different ways. Sometimes maybe they're driving and they have a driving under the influence. That's an automatic revocation of your visa. Okay, so you don't want to get in trouble from that standpoint. In the state of Colorado, the use of marijuana is legal. However, the federal government still prohibits the use of marijuana. So even though it's legal in the state of Colorado, you as an international student are subject to the federal laws. So don't partake in marijuana. If you actually are caught with possession of marijuana, that kind of thing, that is actually another reason for an automatic revocation or cancellation of your visa. Once you're arrested, if you get into trouble, fingerprints go into the FBI system and will eventually make their way to the State Department. And this will likely have a negative impact on your visa interview, especially if the arrest is in the last 5 years. Over the years, I've worked with international students, and before they travel home, one of the questions, so you haven't gotten into any trouble legally, is what a lot of times we'll ask students. And if you don't tell us, I've had students that have gotten stuck actually either trying to renew their visa and they're denied the renewal of their visa, or they get stuck at the border and they have to go home, and then they have to explain to their parents why they can't get back into the United States. So very important that you follow the laws of the US. During our orientation program, we have a police officer that comes and actually talks to you about the laws of the local laws and the laws of the US. And so we'll prepare you to make sure that you're educated and you don't find yourself in trouble, because it will negatively impact your visa renewal. So we want to make sure you're aware of that. And consulate officer mentioned that as well. Visa for family members. So family members can come with you to the US while you study at Colorado State. So let's say you wanted to bring a spouse, either your husband or your wife or kids. These family members are called your dependents, and they can apply for an F2 visa. For these purposes, dependents are your legal spouse and any unmarried children under the age of 21. So if you're in that situation where you want to bring your family with you, please contact the International Admissions Office for the appropriate I-20 paperwork. and they will actually create F2 I-20s so your family members can actually uh, um, apply for visas. And I did notice that, sorry, I got distracted. I did notice that there's a couple questions in the chat I'll get to those. I will come back to those and talk with you about those individually. And then if another family member are coming with you to CSU, they will actually need to apply for a tourist visa. Sometimes parents want to come and actually see where you're going to study, especially with our undergrad students. And so they would need to apply for a B1, B2 visitor visa. And so they would basically go through that process on their own and then accompany you. And every year during orientation, we do have a few parents that attend. We do a parent session for them. Again, as far as the chat, be patient. Kainat, I will answer those questions. Harmeet, I will answer those, and we don't want other students answering questions. We want to give you as official um, answers or responses as possible. So if you want to post those in the question answers, that's great. Okay. So the next slide, we want to give you some sample US visa interview questions, and these are actually found on the consulate website, so you can kind of prepare a little bit or anticipate some of the questions that they might answer you or ask you. Now, again, they only have 3 minutes, so they're not going to ask you all of these, but you want to really prepare yourself to have a response, not a memorized response, but just a genuine response. So go through these lists, and you'll all get a copy of this presentation. I believe we send you out the video, but you'll also get a copy of these questions as well so that you can start to prepare for them. So, but why did you select to study in the United States? That might be a question that they ask you. What institutions did you apply to? Did you only apply to Colorado State or did you apply to several? Why did you select this institution? Why did you select Colorado State University? And sometimes I get prospective students contacting me and say, Greg, you know, what should I respond to the question, why did I select Colorado State University? And when I get that question, I smile and I turn it back to you and say, well, why did you select Colorado State University? There's a reason why you chose CSU. Was it the program? Was it the maybe there's a specialty within the program that you found fascinating. Maybe you had a chance to talk with some professors or communicate with some professors and they encouraged you to apply. Maybe you have a friend at this institution or a brother or a sister. You know, there are probably many reasons why you chose Colorado State. Maybe you got a scholarship that helped encourage you to come. So again, there's multiple answers to this and no answer is wrong. You just want to present that in a genuine way. Again, I'll answer the questions at the end. I see some coming in. That's fantastic. Tell me more about the institution that you selected. So talk to me a little bit. What do you know about Colorado State? And they don't want facts. Well, Colorado State University has approximately 33,000 students, of which 1,500 are international students. Now, they don't want that. They want some genuine responses on you know, just, well, you know, I had a chance to look online and I really like the campus. It's in Fort Collins, which is a mid-sized city in the United States. It's close to the mountains and I absolutely love the mountains. Genuine responses like that. So it has the major that I'm looking for. It does. I went out online and I noticed that I'm from Ghana and I noticed that they had a bunch of students from Ghana. So that immediately gives me the opportunity to connect with the community. Or they have their international students and scholar services staff is fantastic. Every time I've asked them questions, they responded quickly and I know that I'm going to be supported well. So again, you know, a little bit about your responses as far as interview questions, just genuine responses is great. Did you do the TOEFL, GRE, IELTS? What are your scores? What are your summer vacation plans? Will you return home for the summer? And this is not a trick question. If you're planning on staying in the United States during your 5 years, You can tell them that. If you say, well, I'm planning on coming back every semester or every summer, but they look at your finances and they see you have just about enough or just the exact amount to cover your costs uh, for your education and living expenses in the US and not much more than that, then their next thought in their mind is, how are you going to afford coming back to home every summer vacation? If your plan is to get a job on campus during the summertime, that's fine. They completely know that students are going to work while they're actually attending school on campus. And so you don't necessarily have to say that you're going to return home every summer. Now, maybe you have finances that show your finances well exceed the cost. Your parents can help cover costs and have you come back and forth. And if that's the case, if you say, "Hey, I'm going to come back every summer because my parents want me to come back and visit them," and they can see that you can afford that, that's a completely viable answer as well. But they're just curious on what your summer vacation plans are. Who's paying for your education? What does your sponsor do for a living? Where does your sponsor work? Currently, what do you do? So they'll ask all of these various questions. A few more examples. If you're currently working, why are you leaving your current job? If you're helping your father's business or family business, what will your father and family do for the 4 years while you're gone? Who do you have in the US? Do you have friends? Do you have family? A lot of times students think this is a trick question because, oh, do I tell them that I have family in the United States? Is that going to be, I've heard that that's maybe a reason why students are denied. Now, if you have family in the United States that are there as a resource, they're not going to mind that. They're just asking you, what's your circumstances? Quite frankly, they might already know that you have family in the US because maybe there's some association here and they can, excuse me, connect the dots. And so you want to be truthful. If you have friends in the United States, that's great, especially if you have friends at Colorado State, because then they can help you to transition well to US culture, to the US education system. They might ask, how many brothers and sisters do you have? What's your field of study? Why do you think you need to go to the US to do this field? There are many courses and programs in your country. Why do you need to go to the US? You know, maybe it's because, yeah, you could get this same degree in your country, but there's some sort of unique aspect to this program that's being offered at Colorado State. That's why it's important that you really kind of have a little bit of background of the program that you're going to be studying. What are you planning on doing after graduation? Are you planning to work for your 4 year period? What will you do if your visa is rejected? So these are all questions. What are you planning to do after graduation? So with uh, an F1 visa, this is a non-immigrant visa. If you're applying as a J1 student, this is a non-immigrant visa. So they're trying to determine whether your intent is to immigrate to the United States or just come to the United States for studies and then return home. So a great response to what are you planning to do after graduation? Well, I know I'm given the opportunity to work for a year, possibly 3 years if I'm a STEM major. But after that, I plan on returning home and impacting my country. That's a great response. If you say, well, I'm going to get my degree and then I'm going to try to just remain in the United States. They're going to deny you if you say that because you have an intent of immigrating to the US. Now, once you get your visa and you come to the US, if your mind changes and you want to stay, yeah, there's possibilities and routes on how you can do that, an H-1B or a work visa, and then eventually maybe permanent residency. But during your initial interview with the US consulate officer, you want to make sure that your response is, my plan is to return home after graduation. I may work after I graduate to get some experience based on the F1 regulations and being able to do optional practical training or OPT STEM extension if my degree is a STEM field. But after that, my plan is to return home and make an impact in my country. Um, are you planning to work during your 4 year period? A lot of times students are like, what should I say here, right? Well, it's okay to work. You're allowed to work 20 hours per week on campus during the vacation term. During the summer vacation, you can work 40 hours per week on campus. You can apply for internships. and get work authorization to work for a company to gain experience in your field. So it's okay to say, yeah, I'm planning to actually do a part-time job on campus. And if an internship presents itself to me, I would definitely take advantage of that. But my intent is to be a student while I'm there. So I'm intending to really study hard, but I might, along the side of that, work part-time on campus. That's a great response. Okay. And then what will you do if your visa is rejected? What they're asking for there is a plan B. What's your plan B? What's your plan C? If you don't get the visa here, what are you going to do next? You could say, well, I'll reapply again because I really want to study in the United States. But you may also say, well, I've applied to universities in Canada, in Australia, and the UK, and so I'm also, if I get rejected for the US, I have other options as well. Or maybe you'll say, well, I'll try to pursue education then in my home country, and then maybe pursue a graduate degree in the US. But saying, well, I might reapply as well, that is okay as well. All right. So these are sample questions. Kind of go through these. I did notice uh, Obafemi said, please, can you tell us the reason behind each of these questions, what they're expecting? And so I gave you kind of an example of how you can respond to some of these questions. But the reason behind it is they're wanting to know what your intent is. And so they're trying to determine whether you're an immigration risk or your true intent is just to be a student and then come back to the home country. And so have a genuine response for all of these. That's going to help you as you engage the US consulate. But again, because the interviews are only 3 minutes long, they maybe ask you one, maybe two questions or a follow-up question on this list of interviews. They may not ask you any of these questions. Okay, so it really is dependent on the visa consulate, the timing, how much time they have, that sort of thing as well. All right. So once you receive your visa, again, there's 24 people attending right now, and I am going to suggest that you're all going to get your visa. That's what our hope is. But once you've received your visa, you're not quite done. Okay. Even though students have successfully received their visa, U.S. Customs and Border Protection processes all individuals pursuant to immigration laws and reviews all available evidence at the time of application for admission to make a determination of admissibility at the port of entry. Okay, so immigration officers can still refuse entry at the border if they have a reason to question the legitimacy of a student's travel documents or if the traveler cannot adequately answer questions about the purpose of travel. Okay, I had this happen one time where we had a student that was coming to pursue a graduate degree, but he was also going to be a graduate assistant and work with the athletic department to help coach the football team. So he said, well, I'm going to this particular institution to work as a football coach. Denied entry, he had to go home, okay? Because your intent is to be a student, and then maybe you're going to be a graduate assistant and be employed in a lab or within the athletic department, whatever the case might be. But you want to make sure, even as you're entering the border, that you're consistent with your responses. Customs and Border Patrol have stated in all cases the burden of proof rests with the applicant to demonstrate his or her admissibility. So you need to make sure that you're prepared to answer questions upon entry and that these answers are consistent to being a student in the US. You should carry financial documentation or proof that you can afford to attend school in the US. And you must be clear and be able to speak about the purpose of your trip, as well as provide requested evidence of financial support if asked. Last year, there were at least 21 students from India that were denied entry even after they got the visa. Okay, so this was recent information that we've received from one of the consulate officers. So keep that in mind. Once you get your visa, yes, we will celebrate with you. But when you enter the US, you want to make sure that you're consistent with answering questions to Customs and Border Patrol. One final thing with the entry to the US, there are times that you are referred to secondary for some reason. Don't be nervous about that. That's common, okay, where they see your documents, but then they just want to ask you some questions, that kind of thing. I am a US citizen. I used to go fishing up in Canada all the time. When I was driving back into the United States across the border, I got to be the lucky one that was chosen to, they looked through my car to make sure I didn't have any contraband or I wasn't smuggling anything in. And then they put me in a glass box or a room and asked me a bunch of questions, that kind of thing. In those cases, I wasn't, in that case, when that happened to me, I wasn't nervous. I'm a US citizen. I wasn't doing anything illegal. Maybe because I have a beard, I look suspect or whatever the case might be. But just be genuine, honest as you talk with them. One final thing, make sure that you have maybe a 2 to 3 hour layover from your port of entry in the United States to your connecting flight to a land in Denver at Denver International Airport, so that if you get referred to secondary, you still have time to make your connecting flight. Okay. All right, so here are the resources. Whenever we present a presentation, we want to make sure you know where you can find some of the information that we just presented to you. So on this slide, travel.state.gov, content, travel, US visas, study, student visa, HTML. That one actually is a great one that will give you some resources. It will also present you with some of these typical questions that consular officers ask. So any of these links are actually decent resources for you to review. And so then with that, we get to the questions section. And I'll try to answer some of these questions. I do see that there's a few people that are, at least one person that has their hand raised as well. So Kainat asked the question, what can I do if I reject what can I do if I reject visa multiple times? Can you know what the reason of the rejection is? So not typically, Kainat. So if they've given you a 214B, it just means that at the time that they were reviewing, they decided that for some reason something wasn't matching up. And it's up to the consulate officer to give you a valid reason. If they don't want to give that, all they have to do is give you that 214B notice of denial, and they don't have to tell you any other reason. So if it was, if you're in that situation where you've been rejected multiple times, there's something in your responses that are not matching up, or the visa consulate officer is just, for whatever reason, they've jotted down notes. Maybe it was a bad experience. Maybe they felt that you were confrontational. Maybe they just didn't feel like you had the resources. If you apply again, make sure that you have new documentation. Maybe bolster your financial support so that you have documentation that you have more than enough money. Some students have asked the questions, is there a problem if I have multiple sponsors? No, absolutely not. So if you have several sponsors that are willing to cover your expenses, and maybe that gives them a better picture that you have the ability to cover your expenses, you could do that. Sponsors don't just have to be your immediate family. Maybe you have a aunt or uncle that's in the US that's willing to help sponsor you, and they're willing to provide you with a letter and a bank statement that shows that. Maybe it was grades. Maybe, I've had this one time where a student was planning to come for computer science, but his math scores were terrible. Okay, well, computer science is extremely focused on math and equations and that sort of thing. And so he ended up changing his major to something else, reapplying, and he was able to receive the visa based on a different major. So there could be all kinds of different factors. You don't necessarily know what those are, Kainat. And so you just have to do your best. Again, we're going to tell you, be respectful, be calm, be pleasant, be genuine, that kind of thing. Ahmad asked the question, hello, I was rejected with section 214B. Is it going to affect if I reapply? No, that's a common rejection. So, and when they give you that 214B notice, their response is you can apply again. And so if you want to apply again, but try to make sure that you're bringing new evidence, new documentation, something that's changed that will help them to be able to make a different decision. Obafemi, I answered this question, Obafemi, can you give the reason behind each of these questions? Again, they're just trying to determine intent. And then also seeing that what you presented on paper matches up with your responses. How much do you know about Colorado State? How much do you know about the Colorado in general, things like that? They want to get a sense that you've done your research, that you're confident, that you know where you're going, what your plans are, that kind of thing. Sir, Sushruta says, can we get internship in the summer without being for 1 year? That's a great question. The answer is no. The U.S. F1 regulations actually prohibit you from working off campus for the first academic year unless in one case where you're a graduate student and the internship is a required part of your curriculum. And if that's the case, then they will allow you to work an internship during that first year. But all other students, you actually have to wait until you've completed 9 academic months before you're eligible to apply for off-campus work authorization. So it's a great question. And it says I've been rejected. Can you please? So this is kind of a similar question that you asked before, Kainat. Can you please tell me what are the possible reasons of rejection? My 2 other siblings are also studying in the United States. I can't. I wish I could tell you that there's certain reasons why students are denied. It's such an objective, such a subjective process in that for whatever reason, the visa consulate officer has determined that either your answers don't match up, or maybe they are worried that you have 2 other siblings in the United States. I'm not sure. I can't give you the reason why a consulate officer has rejected you. Anonymous attendee, if I uploaded the financial documents around the next week, will I be able to get the I-20 and 10 for spring semester? I'm scared if I'm too late. So that's a question that you would want to actually briefly ask our International Enrollment Center. It's not too late to get an I-20. What I will say is that it might be difficult to get a visa appointment depending on what country that you are from. The other thing that I will suggest is we have been informed by a visa consulate. I just attended a NAFSA Region 2 session. We had a consulate officer there, and they're in some countries, not in all countries, so you have to check with your U.S. consulate office to see whether or not there's an expedite process for the student visa. In some countries there are, and so if you're fortunate enough to live in one of those countries and you go out there, on the U.S. consulate officer's website, there is an ability to request an expedited visa interview and kind of move up the timeline for you. So you have to go out to the consulate office website, the U.S. Embassy's website in your country, and look to see if there's that possibility. If it's too late, apply for the fall, and we'd love to have you come for the fall. So, but upload your financial documents. We'll quickly send you the I-20 that's sent within usually 5 to 10 business days. You'll get it in your email, you'll print that off, sign it, and then you can immediately go out and schedule your visa interview, pay the SEVIS fee, that sort of thing. Sharitha asks how to get an assistantship. Assistantships, graduate assistantships are actually determined by the departments. So if you're a grad student, you need to communicate with the department. Let's say you're I'm just going to throw a major out there, but a master's student in civil engineering, and you want to get a graduate assistantship. You need to contact the civil engineering department and see what their process is for applying for an assistantship. Many times you're approved for an assistantship before you come, and we can put that on the I-20. Sometimes it takes a student a semester or 2 to find an assistantship on campus, so you can look for assistantships as well once you get here. Obafemi, if my cost of attendance is about 53, how much should my sponsor be making to prove that I can fund my stay in the United States? It's not necessarily how much they're making, it's how much they can prove that they have in a bank account. So they would need to show, your sponsor would need to show the equivalent of $53,000 in a bank account. That's and it can be in renminbi or ruples or whatever. but it has to equate to $53,000. So as long as your sponsor has a bank statement shows that it has above and beyond that in some sort of bank account, that's sufficient enough for you to be able to prove that you can fund your stay in the US. You only have to show one academic year. Okay, so you don't have to show all 4 years, you only have to show one academic year. Harmeet says, hello, sir. Does refusal from another country matter? Like I got refused for student visa from Canada by simply saying they were not convinced I'm a genuine student. Will US automatically know that? So that'll be posted in the consulate um, and kind of indicate that in their system, they'll have notes from a previous interview. Could it impact it? It might. If you apply in your home country, and it's extremely difficult to actually get a visa approved outside of your home country embassy, unless, of course, there are cases where maybe I'll use the example of Iran. Iran does not have a US embassy there. So those potential students have to travel to Turkey or to Jordan or somewhere close to apply for a visa. But if you're applying for a US visa in Canada, the oftentimes the question of the consulate officer is, why are you not applying for a student visa in your home country? As far as renewing your visa, sometimes students will go up to Canada or go to Mexico to renew their US visa. And as long as you have a justifiable reason why you're applying for the visa renewal in that country, typically it's fine. But to answer your question, will the US consulate automatically know that you've applied and been rejected in another country? The answer is yes. That system is connected worldwide. And so when they ask, or if they ask, have you ever applied for a US visa before, Harmeet, your response is yes, I did apply in Canada. And basically at that time, they had questions on why I was applying in Canada versus my home country. And so I'm applying back in my home country. Okay. Is required. So first of all, Kainat, you're welcome. Happy to answer any questions that you all have. Sarusha, is required means under what circumstances we can say that internship is required for us? Oh, great question. So you need to actually look at the curriculum or maybe communicate with a professor within your field of study. So let's say you're coming over as a, let me throw a different major, a biology major, okay, or biomedical sciences degree. And maybe you reach out to a professor and you ask them, so as part of my requirements to graduate, do I need an internship in the field? And if the answer is yes, and they require you to engage in that internship or that curricular practical training experience as soon as you get here, then we can approve it. Okay, I'll give you an example. We do have clinical science majors here that they come in immediately. They have to start taking clinical science practicum as soon as they enter the United States. They're starting to gain experience. That's a requirement of that degree. So as a result, those students can get authorization to engage in curricular practical training as soon as they arrive in the United States. So they can get an internship right away. So that internship has to be required, and it has to be required that the program requires it immediately during the first semester or the first year. Okay, and so you can get that response. You can ask that question to a faculty member, a professor, a department chair, that kind of thing, and they'll give you a response on whether or not that's required within the first year. Okay, so hopefully that helps you out. Let's see here. So I see in the webinar chat, we have a few other questions. So let me look at these to make sure I'm not duplicating anything. Let's see here. Some questions which are post-arrival. Is it okay to ask those here? Feel free to put those questions in the question answer, but I'd be happy to answer any questions even post-arrival. That's completely fine, Saloni. Nelson, I've requested for a change of term, but I've not received any response from CSU yet. First appointment date in Ghana doesn't favor me. My classes start on the 16th of January. So you will want to then just immediately email. Let's see here. Bronwyn, are you still here?
Yes.
Can you type in Zach and Melora's email, copy those into this webinar chat so that Nelson, you would want to email either Zach or Melora directly, and they will actually help you get a new I-20 with a change of term on there. That's completely fine. So yeah, and then you follow up question. I already have an I-20, but I've requested a different term. Will I get a different I-20? You will get a different I-20. They'll actually update that to the fall semester then, or maybe it's a summer session, depending on if a graduate program allows you to come during the summertime. Typically, 90% of our graduate students or our just students in general don't start in the summertime. It's probably even a higher percentage than that. Maybe 95% of our students can't start in the summertime because those degree programs don't offer enough credits to allow you to maintain your legal status as soon as you get here. So typically they're going to update your next term to be the fall semester or August. Okay. Keep in mind once you get your I-20 that you can immediately schedule a visa interview. They just recently changed this with the US embassies that they'll allow you to apply up to 12 months prior to your program start date. It used to be limited to 6 months prior to your program start date, but now you can apply up to 12 months before. So that doesn't help many of you right now, but Nelson, for you, even if it's in August, you can immediately start to apply for a visa for the fall semester once you get that updated I-20. So. All right, well, that is all the questions at this point. Are there any other questions that anyone has? And I will just move to the next slide, but any final questions that anyone has? Is there any off-campus housing near the university and bus route connecting to it? Can you help and connect me with current students? So all three of those questions are fantastic. So only the answer is yes, there are many off-campus housing options near the university. Fort Collins has a fantastic bus route that can connect you to the university. All students can ride the Fort Collins bus system for free by showing their ID. So you'll be able to get back and forth depending on where your apartment is within Fort Collins. There's bus routes everywhere, so you won't need a car when you get here. Many students actually purchase bicycles, and even during the winter time, the bicycle paths are cleared, and there's an ability to ride back and forth on bicycles as well. So you'll have that ability to commute back and forth to campus using local city transportation and buses. There's no issues with that. As far as connecting with current students, we absolutely can do that. So Saloni, there is a new app that we just launched called Campus Community, and it's a web-based platform, but it is also, you can download the apps from your phone. And I wish I had those apps. Do you, Bronwyn, can you quickly find those? So they should
Yeah,
be on our, and then
I'll
post
post them.
those. Yep. So if you have an Apple phone, you can download from the Apple Store. If you have a Android, like a Samsung or a Huawei or whatever your phone is, you can download a Android app, and it's called Campus Community. And so we'll give you the links. It'll take you straight there. You can download that app for free. It takes you 30 seconds to create a profile. And you will all actually get, or you should have, if you've been admitted, recently gotten an email. So check your inboxes from Nick in from our International Enrollment Center, our admissions office, that also has given you these links. So as an admitted graduate student or undergraduate student, you immediately have access to this, and you can start communicating with current students, chatting with them. You can find out how many students from your country are actually currently attending based on our current students that are signed up for the app. We have 1,500 international students, and we just launched this app probably about 2 months ago. And of those 1,500, we have about 300 that have signed up for the app, so you can start to communicate with them. You can communicate with brand newly admitted students that are either coming from your country or are from a different country that you're familiar with. On that app, there's an ability to engage in a forum where you can start to talk with each other and find housing. We give you some pre-arrival checklists once you've gotten your visa, so you can start to prepare for your arrival. We have a post-arrival checklist. So once you arrive in the United States, you can go through and you know exactly kind of what you need, the process that you need to follow. We communicate with you, sending you broadcast messages from time to time. There's some fun activities that you can engage in as well. So it's a really cool app. It's free to all of our current international students and our admitted international students. That immediately starts to give you a sense of belonging and connection with the campus community, so you can start to communicate with other students. So it's a wonderful question. And yes, immediately download the app, sign up for, create a quick account. It's going to ask you your name, your major, the country you're from, the languages that you speak, and then it's going to ask for between 5 and 10 interests that you're passionate about. Maybe you love music, maybe you love chess, maybe you love reading, maybe you love cooking, whatever. You'll put your interest down and it'll immediately start to suggest people or current students and newly admitted students that you might want to connect with based on your major, your interests, your country, all of that kind of stuff. So it's a really cool app, and it gets you connected immediately. So Bronwyn's put both of those links. The first one is if you have an iPhone. Second one is if you have an Android, feel free to download those and you can immediately start communicating with people. You do have to be admitted to have access to all of that. So once you've been admitted, then you actually put in your student ID and your Colorado State University email address that's been assigned to you. And then from there, you'll get connected. If you don't have a Colorado State University ID, but you have a Gmail ID, you don't have a Colorado State email address, but you have a Gmail or something like that, you can enter that in there and still get connected based off of your student ID that was assigned to you. So there are some great ways to connect prior to arriving. Start to ask some of our current students questions and get connected. So it's awesome. You are welcome, Saloni. Again, we are absolutely passionate about bringing these pre-arrival workshops to you so that and specifically this one, because the more confidence we can instill in you as you engage the embassy and you apply for a visa, the best thing I can tell you before you approach the window and start talking with the consulate officer, take a deep breath, be calm, smile if you've got this wonderful smile. If you don't have a wonderful smile, still smile, okay? It can be actually a really great way to just engage one of our consulate officers. Give them reasons to say yes to your visa approval, okay? So give them reasons to approve your visa. So be genuine, be calm. Don't memorize your answers. Go through that list of questions, kind of have an idea of how you're going to respond, but just genuinely be yourself. And we will trust that you will have a successful experience as you apply for your visa. So, any final questions? All right. Hearing none, you can always contact either. One final thing, Brennan, can you put our ISSS email address in there as well as the international for the admissions? So I think admissions is international@colostate.edu, and then our email address. So ISSS@colostate, that actually will get you connected with our student services team. If you have any questions about when you arrive, orientation questions, things, we'll route those to the appropriate advisors. If you have any admissions questions, then we would tell you to contact our admissions office, our international admissions office, so the International Enrollment Center, and their team will help you with anything as far as like updating I-20s, or if there's anything remaining with your application that you need to complete, all of that good stuff as well. So. All right, with that, I'm going to wish you all a wonderful afternoon or evening. And again, we wish you the best of luck in your visa interview process. And we will be here to greet you at Colorado State when you arrive in the spring here in early January. It'll be a little bit cold, but we will, I think we have one more session on kind of preparing for your arrival and meet the ISSS staff. That'll happen within the next month or so here. And just be on the lookout for those invites and emails for other pre-arrival workshops. If you've already attended that one, you've already gotten to meet some of our wonderful people in the Office of International Students. Looks like November 28th is the next Meet the ISSS staff and preparing for your arrival at Colorado State University. So we will have our whole team there to kind of chat and smile. And it's always nice to start to recognize some of the people that are going to be serving you as a student here at Colorado State University. And since we started these, every orientation, I get a few students that have come up and said, Mr. Craig, I saw you online, and those presentations were great and it helped prepare me so well. And we love to hear that, and we love to talk with you. What you see is what you can expect when you get here. This is not a show. This is genuinely who we are at Colorado State, and you are going to have a wonderful experience with many staff members that are here to support you. So we are looking forward to greeting you all when you arrive in January for spring semester, or if you're deferring to the fall, we'll see you in the fall. And again, I'm going to trust that you all have just a successful experience going through your visa process. So with that, have a wonderful afternoon and evening, and we will probably engage with you somehow, some way through emails or other workshops that are coming up in the future. So have a wonderful evening. Take care.